Ladies and gentlemen, scholars, and seekers of truth, today I address a matter regarding the interpretation of ancient Kemetic texts, specifically the passage that reads, "His phallus is between the buttocks of his son and heir." It is easy, in our modern context, to project contemporary ideas and interpretations onto ancient texts. However, to do so would be to misunderstand and misrepresent the symbolic, cultural, and metaphysical richness of the Kemetic worldview. First, let us consider the language of the ancients. The Egyptians spoke in symbols with allegorical and metaphorical imagery. This passage, like many others, is not a description of a literal act, but rather a symbolic expression of the transmission of creative power, authority, and life force from father to son. The imagery is stark because it seeks to capture the gravity of this generative process, which is central to the continuation of divine principles. The phallus, in this context, is not about sexuality, it is about creation, vitality, and the power to bring forth life and ensure continuity.
See, Geb represents Earth, the foundation of all physical life. His son and heir, Asar, symbolizes the highest aspirations of human consciousness, resurrection, renewal, and spiritual transcendence. The relationship between them is not personal or interpersonal, but is cosmic and metaphysical. This dynamic, it's the grounding of spiritual consciousness within the physical world, right? So when we run into these people that want to take these themes as if though they're literal, Geb is not a literal person. Asar is not a literal person. It is the representation of the highest aim of spiritual consciousness within you. The purpose of this imagery is to impress upon you the continuation and the inheritance of divine responsibility, which is consistent with Kemetic text when you read them. So if you're going to engage in Kemetic philosophy, you have to understand the metaphorical and allegorical nature of its symbols, its mythology. It is not literal. They have some literal stories, which is its actual history. The mythology is allegorical and metaphorical. You have to understand the principles behind the allegory. Coffin text spell 700 has a lot of symbolic and mythological imagery. So Geb as the principle of Earth, it symbolizes stability, fertility, and the physical world. As the father of Asar, or Set, and Heru, Geb embodies the principle of generation, the grounding of human life, and providing a connection to the material world. His relationship with his children reflect the dynamics that occur between creation, sustenance, and the challenge of divine succession, right?
If we look at Asar represents the highest aspect of consciousness within man. It is the integrating of the divine essence, or that divine spark of consciousness within man, and overcoming the Sethian aspects of consciousness that allows one to engage in acts and actions that bring harm and hurt either to self or community. Now Asar embodies transformation and ascension through dying to the egoic nature and rising up into the divine self which is within. That is what Asar represents. And so it is more than just becoming a new man. It is becoming a divine being.
When the text says a man shall be among the living, this is talking about the resurrection of the self and the promise of eternal life.
Eternally being engaged in the supreme consciousness of the universe, right? That's what this phrase means. It's aligning all of your inner principles with the divine principles in self. Right. It talks about transcending your limitations, transcending the limitations imposed upon you by the earthly plane, and then attaining a state of spiritual awareness and immortality. And in Kemet, they often discuss this Hassan life among the living. The concept of the two cows in Kemetic cosmology represents the dual forces that shape our existence, Nut the sky and Geb up the earth. These two principles embody the cosmic and the terrestrial, the spiritual and the material world coming together, creating a balance that is essential to life. To be between the cows is to exist in a trance-like state, where human consciousness engages with both realms, right? So this is the moment of transition where we transcend the earthly limitations and reach towards the infinite potential attunement to the cosmos. It's the journey of spiritual realization that we aspire towards the divine and to be heavenly being.
Geb is cleansed, and he grants me his appearings in glory. This phrase carries deep spiritual significance, offering us a lens through which to view the transformative journey of purification and divine connection. Geb, the god of the earth, represents not only the physical world but also the foundation of our existential material plane upon which we live, grow, and seek meaning. To say that Geb is cleansed is to recognize the possibility of transformation, where the burdens of material desires and attachments are lifted. This cleansing is not a simple act, it is a profound process of aligning ourselves with the higher truths that transcend the physical. When the earthware purified, the divine light, described as Geb's appearings in glory, begins to shine through. This light is the essence of the divine, the spark of creation, and the promise of spiritual enlightenment. It reminds us that the material world, when freed from the distortions of attachment, becomes a sacred vessel, a channel for divine expression. Imagine the earth, vibrant and whole, no longer burdened by the weight of impurity, radiating with the glory of creation. Now, consider the human body and soul in the same way. When we cleanse ourselves, our thoughts, our actions, our desires, we allow that same divine light to shine through us. We too become channels for the sacred, living expressions of the cosmic order. This teaching urges us to see the earth not as a realm separate from the divine, but as an integral part of it. Through purifying Geb, we are reminded that even the material can embody the sacred, that our lives are not limited to the physical, but are vessels of spiritual potential. When we consider the image of the plant placed between his lips, we are invited to explore its connection to the creative word, the logos. This is no ordinary act of speech, it is the divine utterance, the sacred articulation through which life itself is called into being. The plant, sprouting from the divine lips, becomes the bridge between thought and manifestation, between the unseen and the tangible. In the Kemetic worldview, this act of speaking life is not merely symbolic, it reflects the foundational principle of creation. The universe, in its infinite complexity, emerges not from force or chaos, but from deliberate and harmonious articulation. This is the power of divine Otaranchetto, shape the formless, to bring order to the chaotic and to breathe life into the inert. The plant, then, is far more than a metaphor for life. It represents the regenerative cycle of existence, a constant reminder that creation is ongoing, like the plant that draws sustenance from the earth and reaches toward the heavens. The act of divine utterance unites the physical and the cosmic, grounding life in the material world, while imbuing it with spiritual significance. His phallus is between the buttocks of his son and heir. This imagery may appear startling, but it is essential to approach it not with a literal interpretation, but through the symbolic lens of ancient Egyptian thought. This phrase carries a deeply spiritual meaning, reflecting the transmission of creative power or life force from Geb, the earth and father, to Ozir, his son and heir. It symbolizes the flow of divine energy, the grounding of spiritual consciousness into the physical world, and the continuity of divine principles through human existence. Geb, as the embodiment of the earth, represents the material foundation, the fertile ground upon which life is sustained. Ozer, his heir, transcends this materiality to become the embodiment of renewal, resurrection, and spiritual elevation. The relationship between father and son mirrors the process of rooting higher consciousness within the physical realm, allowing divine principles to take form and flourish in the human experience. The imagery of transmission signifies the continuity of creation, the way divine energy flows through generations, ensuring that the sacred order of the universe is preserved. It is not merely about inheritance, but about the sacred act of passing on purpose, power, and the alignment with Mat, the principle of truth and balance. Through this transmission, we see the eternal dance of life, death, and rebirth. Geb, representing the foundation of life, passes on his essence to Ozer, who embodies the triumph of spirit over death, of renewal over decay. This process is not limited to the gods but reflects the broader human journey, the responsibility to align ourselves with divine truth, and to ensure its perpetuation in the world around us. This act of passing on creative power also underscores the cyclical nature of life and the interconnectedness of all beings. It is a sacred trust, a reminder that what is divine in us must be nurtured, shared, and perpetuated for the harmony of all.